Hi, everyone, and welcome back. We're joined by a very special guest today, Yazmin Beltran. She is the Public Information Officer for Henderson Police and has had many other interesting jobs around Las Vegas as well. Yazmin, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So why don't we start with you telling us more about your career path thus far and what your day-to-day looks like now in your job?
Absolutely. Well, my career began in journalism. I spent a little bit over a decade telling community stories, going out there in the community and learning about communication. And one of the things that I learned is how powerful communication can be in shaping, when communicating, when talking to people, when telling stories. That experience naturally helped me transition into public service. I recently served as the Public Information Officer for Clark County, where I led bilingual campaigns. I was the Spanish-speaking Public Information Officer, and I worked on different topics, highlighting adoption, foster care, animal welfare, housing, social service, and many, many other areas. Today, I am working as a public information officer for the city of Henderson, specifically the Henderson Police Department, and I am in charge of also public information, social media, and my day-to-day includes writing press releases, coordinating media responses, handling social media, our social media channels, creating content for our social media channels, and also developing campaigns related to public safety and highlighting the human side of police, right? Every day is unique, every day is different, and one moment I can be answering or responding to media calls, and the second I can be out in the field filming our officers or filming our new recruits or, working on campaigns. So that is the exciting thing about this, job in communications, that every day is pretty unique and different.
Yep. No 2 days are the same. That's one thing that I think we all generally like about being in this field. Why do you think it's so important for organizations to prioritize diversity in their digital communication strategies?
I think it's very important. Diversity is the reality of our communities. I think a lot of the organizations, not only here in Southern Nevada, but in the country, are seeing this not just as a checkbox, but as something that they need to work towards. When organizations reflect, the voices of the community and the values, they create and they build this trust, right, and credibility. It's important to prioritize diversity because that also translates into learning and understanding how audiences consume content. What are the content they consume? What are the platforms they use, right? And what are the messages that resonate with them? Because one audience can be very different. I'm just going to put an example. The Hispanic audience can be very different than, people that only speak English. Even the way they consume their content, what they read, what they see, what they hear. So it's important to understand that. And for all agencies to really understand, especially in the public sector, that creating content for diverse audiences is important. And it's important that they also craft the storytelling according to those audiences and that they use the right visuals, the right tone, and that they can reach to our community as a whole.
Are there any examples that come to mind of ways that you've seen organizations use online tools to effectively reach underrepresented populations?
Yes, it's really fascinating to see how agencies in the public sector and in the private sector are really learning and trying to understand where the audiences are. One example is when I was a public information officer for Clark County, we saw the need for a Spanish social media channels to serve the Hispanic population. Clark County is 2.4 million residents, and Clark County is the regional provider. So when the pandemic hit, the Hispanic community was really underserved when it came to vaccines, right? COVID tests, and also housing. There were a lot of programs like rental assistance, programs to pay for utilities, and that community specifically, unfortunately, was not getting the information and at the speed that they needed it. So that is one example, and it's also fascinating to see that now many other public agencies are also going towards that, that way. I know City of Las Vegas launched a YouTube page. They have a newsletter in Spanish, so they are now seeing that it's important to really take action and launch those channels to reach out to those communities.
Absolutely. How do you think you can balance, like especially in your role, because you're one person running multiple channels, how do you balance reaching diverse audiences with also reaching the general mass public too, and what challenges does that bring?
I think one of the challenges is to make sure the one community doesn't feel excluded, right, or left out when it comes to the messaging. One of the examples that I come to mind is during the election when the Spanish channels were not launched yet. We had to put information in Spanish on our English channels, and a lot of people didn't take that very well. So it's when you have to really assess, right? You have to evaluate what is the manpower. Is it just one person handling the Spanish channels? If so, how are we going to strategize? What are going to be the channels? Where is our audience in Spanish? That was the specific target, right? So we had to evaluate, go through surveys and see, okay, where is the Hispanic community? And in that case, the Hispanic community was consuming the content on Facebook mostly. And we wanted to also reach out to informing the community, and we realized Twitter back then was one of the social media channels that was going to give us that reach to specific news stations and news reporters. So that's how we evaluated, okay, with the manpower that we have, we're going to have to really plan the strategy and really work with our content and to make sure that the content that we needed to produce was going to be the right content for the audience that we needed to reach out to.
With our Latino audience, what channels do you feel have been most successful in reaching them? You said Facebook. Are there any other ones that come to mind?
Yes. So Facebook is multi-generational, right? It's all ages. But we started to see that Instagram was also a platform that was reaching out to the Hispanic community, and YouTube. Oddly enough, YouTube long format content is one of the platforms that the Hispanic community specifically, is really gravitating towards too.
How do you feel making the effort online to better connect with different populations? How do you think that translates into how the communities feel about the brand or organization in real life?
I think it's the way I see it is the way we do the storytelling, right? You can tell a lot by kind of like setting up benchmarks too. So in my case, or in the case of producing content and going towards specific platforms, I needed to look at how other jurisdictions were doing, were producing content, but also looking at how the community was consuming the content. That not only required for me to set up all my benchmarks, looking at other platforms, looking at other channels, looking at other pages, but also doing the social media listening and looking out in the community, right? Going and to see, the groups, what are they looking at? What are they reading? What is the form? What are they seeing? Do we need to produce only video? Do we need to do more photos or graphics, or even partner at times with influencers? So it's a lot of things. It's, I think, social media listening and looking out and seeing how, what's trending and what the specific audience is consuming.
And what common mistakes do you think brands make when they decide, okay, we need to make more of an effort to provide information in more than one language? What are some of the things that they get wrong across all communication aspects when they decide to do that?
I think, in my experience from what I've seen, is just thinking that it's just going to be a Google Translate effort, right? Or thinking that they can solely rely on AI. I think that is a big mistake. I think removing the expert, or the person that knows, or even stopping themselves, or agencies stopping themselves from reaching out to people that know the community, it's one of the biggest mistakes. I think when you produce content that is going to reach a different audience that the one you're used to, is going to require having those experts, having the people that know, and that is going to dictate a lot into what type of products you produce and how the message is received as well.
And what advice would you give to someone who wants to engage new audiences but isn't sure where to start and what they could maybe get wrong?
I think that is one of the biggest fears that everybody producing new content, or everybody launching a new social media page has. It's like, am I doing this right? Am I going to reach out my audience the right way? Am I going to produce the content that it's gonna resonate? But I think honestly is being curious, having that curiosity, going out there, and again, your social media listening. It's nothing. There's nothing wrong with looking at how other jurisdictions are producing content. Just an example, right? If I'm gonna produce content or open a social media page for a county, and I want to see how other counties are doing, right? Go for it and be curious. Take a look at how, what they're doing. Set up those benchmarks. If I am Clark County, or if I am the city of Henderson or city of Las Vegas, and I'm with this task of creating a whole new social media page for Spanish, just an example, I'm going to go and see how other counties and other cities are doing it. And I mean, even go and see how other probably countries are producing, content. What trendings are they following, and what is really sticking out and what is resonating with the community? Because I think that's also going to tell you a lot.
Definitely. And what would you say, especially for our Latino residents, what type of information or tone does it seem like they do find inauthentic, and what type of messaging builds that trust and shows that the organization is making an authentic attempt?
I think it's making the agencies, right? They have to really make an effort. And even you see it in, I'm just going to put an example. When you watch a movie, right, and you are supposedly watching someone that speaks the Spanish fluently, and you see that it's really not, you are going to hear from your audience. I saw it in a couple of examples. Not too long ago, a movie that came out, the Hispanic community really took it to heart to say, hey, the director wasn't really understanding, or didn't really understand our community. Is the same when you produce content for the Latino or the Hispanic audience. You really have to understand the nuances, the different cultures even within the Hispanic community, and really understanding and do your homework, right? If I'm gonna produce content for the Hispanic or Latino community, I don't know, in Las Vegas or in Phoenix, I need to know what are my audiences, right? What's the percentage of Mexicans? What's the percentage of people from El Salvador? So really understanding and crafting the content from there, because I think that really goes a long way with the Hispanic community, because they're gonna feel that you know them, that you know the audience, and that you are listening.
Yeah, and that not all Latinos are of the same origin, and so making sure that the messaging reflects that. That's a really great point. How do you see the role of digital media evolving in terms of diversity and inclusion over the next few years?
I think it's gonna continue to move. It's moving fast. I think it's really exciting to see how agencies and in the private and the public sector as well, just to see, for instance, a news station launching, an English news station launching a whole new product in Spanish, not bilingual, but in Spanish. It lets you know that, okay, digital is moving in the right direction, right? Looking at news outlets that are national news outlets that are always produce their content in English, and now they have Newsweek in Espanol, right? Or seeing those efforts that agencies are really trying to make sure that the digital footprint is diverse is something that I think it's gonna continue, and it's happening right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if it grows.
Do you think
more.
There's any brands that are setting a really good example of how they're providing content in English and in Spanish?
I think even though, and I know you see it, right? Some news outlets are, laying off people. You see them, at least the one of the biggest brands, continue their operations, right, and their content and producing content in Spanish. I think news stations are one example. I think on the public sector, during my time and as a public information officer, I saw a lot of jurisdictions moving forward, language access plans, right? Our jurisdictions are another example of that. I think in the United States, seeing that the public sector is really paying attention to the diverse communities it gives me a lot of hope. I want to say in the public sector, government entities, cities, counties that are really moving the needle into making sure the community has access to language access, but also in the private sector to see, news stations that are moving in that direction as well.
With everything happening in DEI efforts being more called into question and being questioned, I think, by the country as a whole, do you think that that's impacting, especially like Latino residents, how they're impacting or how they're interacting with you online? And is it impacting the way that you're communicating with them?
It's really interesting because when, this whole thing started, right? When everything was happening, and it was happening fast. At least my team, when I was at the county, we were tracking how other jurisdictions were moving, and there were working groups, not only at a local level, but at a national level. All the jurisdictions, cities, counties, states were sharing information, and it was a relief to see that. I want to say that 90% of those jurisdictions in that working group were still moving forward with the plans. We're still moving forward with informing the community, and everything that was happening was actually empowering them to move stronger, to send, make sure that the plans that they had, that the information that they were sharing was still in the language that their community needed them to. And not only Spanish, I'm talking about, different languages. So I think even though with everything that's happening, I think entities are continuing to move forward to make sure that the communities they represent are well informed.
Yeah, and maybe really taking stock in the fact that they have the data to back up who our residents are, and that, as you said, the plan should be continued because it's right there on how our demographics are breaking down, and we want to be able to communicate with them. That's well
Absolutely.
said. Mm-hmm. In speaking to the students, what should students in this field keep in mind as they create content for increasingly diverse audiences in the future?
I would say they have to keep in mind that at least in Southern Nevada, right, we have different audiences that are very unique. I think it's important to keep in mind that, and that they need to be aware of the cultural differences or what the cultures are. I think being informed, and I think also getting out in the community, right? I would give them an advice, especially for those studying journalism, to go visit the different consulates, right? When I was a news reporter, I had to do stories not only that were impacting the Hispanic community, but also other communities, and learning from those communities, right? Learning about their cultures. It tells you and it opens your world. It makes you understand things from different perspectives. So I think learning about different cultures, learning about the cultures and the communities in your community is also important. So that would be my advice.
Well, I think our big thing in marketing is always know your audience, and whoever you're talking to, know who they are and know them well. And that can be people and it can be languages and all sorts of different things related to the brands that we might ultimately represent. So last question, what advice do you have for students who want to work in communications? You started in journalism and made it into communications, so I think that's common that most people don't realize too. So what are your parting thoughts for them?
It's very common. I want to say that when I was starting in journalism here in Las Vegas, there was one government entity that approached me, and it was so weird, because now that I look back, I'm like, oh wow, I was a reporter barely starting, right? And then they approached me and they offered me if I wanted to work in their communications department. And at that moment, I didn't understand what that meant. I just was thinking, I want to be a reporter. I want to stay in news. I didn't know anything else. But now that I look back, it's like communications. It's such an amazing world of opportunities, right? You can be a news reporter. You can be in marketing. You can be at a public agency in the communications department. So what I would say is, again, be curious, fall in love with storytelling, fall in love with not only writing well, but going out and look at the world, look at your community, spend time in the community, spend time with people. I think to be in this profession, you really have to be a good listener, and you really have to be willing to listen to what people tell you, and to hear and be open and hear from other perspectives, and understand, right, that this is the journalism sphere or the journalism space. It's not only necessarily being a news reporter, but it can be anything that you want and want to communicate.
Well said. Well, thank you so much for being here again. I really appreciate it. And to my students, I will talk to all of you soon.
Thank you.